Chapter 10. Saria tried not to panic or let her fears show as her friends got to work on the small doorway. They'd scooped up the snow melt and dried the door as best they could for one built into some kind of furnace and then heaped with far too much ice. But Mira and Thorgrim worked fast, using a brush each to apply the paste Thorgrim had made. Mira took over when the heat became unbearable for him again, her body able to withstand it more easily. As soon as she pasted over the final part of the surface, there was a flash of light and a crackle. Saria had to look away, and she noticed the others had done the same, with the exception of Mira, who blinked rapidly, clearly unable to see for a moment. She flailed, trying to get up off the floor, until Yarlin gave her a hand.
"What now?"
Saria asked. She couldn't see a handle anywhere, and she wasn't sure that the door should be even tried yet. It could let all that heat through. But Thorgrim seemed to have an idea. He reached for something in another pouch of his, muttered a few words, and then reached out to touch the door. Almost immediately, it frosted over. Before anyone could stop him, he reached into the dirt on one edge and found a purchase with gloved fingers. Then he yanked. Despite the angle, the door seemed to come open easily, lifting like some kind of trapdoor. Attached to its underneath was a charred and blackened chain, and carved into the rock underneath that was a set of stone steps. They were covered in soot and ashes. Somewhere inside a light shone, flickering with a slightly bluey-green hue. Now that the door was up, it no longer radiated any heat, continuing to cool under whatever magic Thorgrim had cast upon it. There was no sign of whatever had heated it in the first place.
"Who is going in first?" Mira asked. "I don't mind."
"I think it would be wise to let Thorgrim go first," Andorn replied, "especially with the protections his goddess grants him in situations like this. But you can go second if it's better for your sensibilities." Mira grinned, ignoring Andorn's strange choice of words, and followed the dwarf. Saria felt curiosity get the better of her, and she went next. Slipping between the two men stood on the surface.
"Oh my,"
Mira exclaimed, but Saria couldn't see what it was that had got her attention. What could she see? So far Saria could just see more charred remains and earth. Then Mira stepped to one side and let her see. Darting around at the far end of the chamber they had descended into was a small flame. Its light was almost blue, and it never kept still, always moving around except for an odd occasion when it would pause and look at them, if a fire could look.
"Well, that explains a few things,"
Andorn said, having arrived next.
"I'm pretty sure it gives me way more questions than it answers," Thorgrim added.
Andorn laughed.
"Is that what those thugs were looking for?"
"Aye, the eternal flame of Kendra," said Yarlin.
"Kendra?" Mira asked. "The demigod?"
"The very one."
"You've heard of this?"
Thorgrim interrupted. "Only admiss, I never believed it, of course. Who would? A sentient flame that did the bidding of a woman born of the gods and a human woman who could cast her away? Kendra had issues, and sentient flames aren't normal. I just assumed she knew some good magic for making fire controllable. Turns out she had an enraged flame-based pet."
"Pet?"
Mira asked. Yarlin nodded, and suddenly she broke into a grin.
"I've never had a pet before."
Before any of the rest of them could stop her, Mira walked closer.
"Hi there, sweetie. Don't be afraid. We're not here to hurt you. I'm a lot like you, even."
Mira had her eyes focused on the flame as she spoke, and it seemed to still some of the frantic movements, slowing itself and appearing to listen. While she had its attention, she tilted her head back and let out a single jet of flame. Immediately the creature went nuts. It zipped back and forth and around Mira, narrowly missing the rest of them. More than once, Saria had to sidestep it, duck, or get out of the way somehow. Eventually, it came to a halt in front of Mira, and Saria could have sworn she saw it grin for a moment.
"Wow," Yarlin said. "We've found a lunatic of a fireball that's been locked under the earth for the gods know how long. What are we meant to do with this?"
"Shut it back up," Andorn said. Immediately the flame flashed more green and seemed to grow. It flew to the side again, coming around Mira as if it was going to head for the opening. But Thorgrim moved as if to block it, uttering words that sounded menacing and strange. It flashed again, this time a sort of pink, and fell back stunned as it hit the ground, sparks flying as the smell of more charred earth rose from the areas it touched.
"We can't shut the poor thing back up. It's been trapped down here,"
Mira protested, her voice a little whiny as she walked towards it, the only one of them not afraid at all.
"We can't let it out."
Thorgrim looked stern, and Saria knew he was right.
"It could do untold damage. I've heard of Kendra and everything she did. It never ended well."
"But this little fellow isn't Kendra. How do we know what it will do?"
"It sets fire to things,"
Yarlin said, more than a little angry.
"It's fire."
"It can float."
Mira looked to it, and it moved closer to her again, hovering near her, but keeping far enough away it wouldn't do her any harm.
"I've had enough," Yarlin continued. "There's no treasure here, and I'm exhausted. I'm going to the hut to relax while you do what's needed."
He stomped past Andorn, but the rogue didn't move. "We can't let this thing fall into the wrong hands. It could burn down this entire forest if it got out, and not even mean to."
"I'll guard it," Thorgrim said. "But Mira makes a good point. It's not Kendra, and it clearly understands some basic communication."
"I want to take care of it,"
Mira added. "Then we'll learn about it and decide. In the meantime, we'll be staying here." Andorn also strode off as Thorgrim and Mira moved closer to the flame. It shifted slightly as Thorgrim lifted a hand, responding to the gesture as if it was trying to mimic it.
"Can you understand us?"
Thorgrim asked. It bobbed up and down.
"Does that mean yes?"
Mira asked. Again, it wobbled, rising and falling.
"Up and down for yes, back and forth for no."
While Thorgrim spoke these words, the flame moved and copied. When Mira clapped into light, it whizzed backward in a circle, almost like a rolling ball of fire, before returning to where it had been, grinning once more.
"See, it's friendly,"
she said a moment later.
"It does seem so."
Saria stepped in to join the three of them, finally having the courage. As she got closer, she could feel some of the heat radiating off it.
"Hi, little one."
It came closer to her and hovered, like it was studying her face. She smiled, trying to look as unfrightened and unthreatening as possible.
"Have you been here a long time?"
It nodded, but more slowly, staying in the lower position once it was done, the flames flickering lower and growing darker.
"You've been lonely."
Again it bobbed.
"We're here now,"
Mira said. Immediately it seemed to warm, growing more orangey green at the base.
"Do you need anything?"
Thorgrim asked. It waved back and forth.
"You just like people."
It answered in the affirmative, and before Saria could stop herself, she yawned. It seemed to find this funny, rolling over itself again, sparking with flames and grinning at her. "Saria," Andorn's voice came from the doorway. "I think I'm going to need you for a moment." She sighed. For a moment she had also hoped to get a break, but it appeared that wasn't going to happen. After saying goodbye to the fire, Saria left it with Mira and Thorgrim, both of them asking it yes and no questions in turn. Whoever Kendra was, she had left behind a very interesting and unexpected surprise for anyone who entered this strange tomb-like room. If we're not burying this thing back under several feet of earth, then we need to follow our other lead. I need to figure out where the guy in charge here is meant to meet someone tonight. I could do with an extra set of eyes that also has light feet. We can't leave tracks that aren't already there.
That's not going to be easy in all this snow.
I've got an idea, if you'll trust me, Andorn said. Saria shrugged. It wasn't any problem to her to try whatever he had to suggest. It might make the day more interesting, and it helped her feel like she was doing something useful. As soon as Yarlin knew to keep an eye out for danger, Andorn beckoned her to follow him. He walked into the forest, clearly looking for some kind of tree or bush in particular. She traipsed after him, not sure what else to do when she didn't know what he was looking for. Eventually, he reached it. A bush with lots of small branches going out in waves and layers. Pulling 4 of the sturdier branches off, he offered her 2. Tie these to your shoes. They'll act like a kind of snowshoe and keep us from making discernible tracks. Then just stay away from the drifts and entirely unbroken snow.
Got it,
she replied, doing her best to copy his actions. Before long, they had the branches on the bottoms of their feet. She had to lift her legs higher than normal to ensure nothing snapped. But as she took several steps and looked back, she had to admit she was impressed. It looked like something had passed, but it wasn't clear what, and in isolation, it didn't look like any kind of useful print. Andorn led her into the forest, finding another path, but this one didn't go towards the town so much as parallel to it, off to the north of the lake. They carried on, Saria trying to ignore the ache in her legs. We're almost there, he said suddenly. As he spoke, he slowed and looked at the horizon.
What are we looking for?
She asked. Somewhere, 2 people have been meeting. Where one waits somewhere, the other can see from a long way off. And we also need to find the signs they've met there in the last week or so. Fresher tracks, things like that. Saria let out a low whistle that was both specific and vague.
It's all we've got to go on, isn't it?
Yep. And we've got to find it before tonight, or they're going to know something is wrong and their men aren't doing what they ought.
And then they might find that flame.
Exactly. Saria opened her mouth to ask what they wanted it for, but she never voiced the question, her mind already filling in the blanks. There was only one reason people like this wanted something that had once been controlled and used to ruin an entire city. They wanted to do something similar.
And how did they know where to look?
She asked. Many who knew of Kendra knew that she hid herself away once she had had her revenge. She found a small cabin somewhere where she could live out the rest of her days. Someone came and hunted her after a few years. They bragged that they succeeded, but there was never any proof. Some think she fled and hid herself even better. But there was no mention of her flame in that story.
So she left it behind?
Or hid it.
Behind a cursed door buried in the ground.
So it would seem. Andorn stopped suddenly, looking about them. He frowned before taking another step. Not sure what he thought he had noticed. Saria stepped to one side, but as she did, her foot caught something in the snow and almost tripped her onto her face. Instead, she squealed. He came to her as she realized she had found something in the snow. Grabbing a stick so it wouldn't look too much like fingers or melt the snow, she pushed it out of the way and revealed a small tinderbox. This one was rusted, but it hadn't been there long, the reddish-brown of the rust not having seeped into the snow around. When she pointed it out, Andorn stood where she had and slowly revolved on the spot. When he had done a full rotation, he seemed to look puzzled. Not sure what he was looking for, but determined to be useful, Saria slowly did the same thing where she now stood, a little uphill and off to one side, noticing she also had a bit more space to do it in. At first, she felt silly, but just over halfway around, she noticed something glinting. "Up there," she said, pointing up the slope into the forest. The wind seemed to gust in their favor, blowing some of the trees around ahead and revealing in the distance another house. This one was made of stone, pale and almost at one with the snow as well. No wonder they'd not noticed it. "Yes, there. Now come quick. We cannot be seen here in the daylight." Andorn grabbed her wrist and quickly hurried her downhill, not going the way they'd come, but another route, stomping around and acting strangely as he tugged her along. It was clearly his way of making their tracks look less human and purposeful, but given her tired state, Saria was grateful when he decided they'd gone far enough and they took a more direct route through the trees back to the hut, and the flame they'd found lost under it for who knew how long. They got lost more than once, the trees not always yielding to the path they wanted, but they were both elves, and tracking through forests came naturally to them. They soon found openings and got their bearings back. "We all need some rest," he declared as soon as they were in sight of the hut and clearing. Yarlin sat on the small porch area, the first to notice them. Andorn repeated his command, suddenly looking far more tired than Saria had ever seen him. "You rest. I'll keep watch," she said when it was clear he was going to order the others to rest as well. At first, it looked like he might protest, but eventually he nodded, letting his strong persona slip for just a second to show the exhaustion he felt. "You kept watch last night, didn't you?" she asked, barely speaking above a whisper, as Mira and Thorgrim debated what to do with the flame and the door to its little prison. He nodded. "Go. I'll make sure this lot don't do anything stupid." "Thank you," he whispered as he headed into the hut. After taking a deep breath, she went over to Thorgrim and Mira. They were going to have to close the flame back inside. It couldn't get out, and that meant one of them needed to guard it.